music. We usually do a story. We're not going to do a story this time. We're going to look at some menorahs and talk about how Hanukkah works and what you might want to do, what you might not want to do. So let's go ahead and get started. And we'll get started with one of our Hanukkah songs, Not by Might. Not by Might's in English, so not too hard to pick up. And hopefully we'll have some fun with it. Another song will rise, another song will rise. Not by might and not by power, but by spirit alone will we all live in peace. Not by might and not by power, but by spirit alone. Not by might and not by power, but by spirit alone will we all live in peace. Not by might and not by power, but by spirit alone will we all live in peace. Not by might, not by power. So that was Not by Might. Not by Might was written by Debbie Friedman. A lot of people who went to Jewish day camps and Jewish sleepaway camps kind of know Debbie Friedman's stuff because everybody sang Debbie Friedman songs at camp, even when nobody told them that it was Debbie Friedman. That's how popular her stuff was. So we should talk about Hanukkah a little bit. We've got Hanukkah coming up in just a few days. So we know people get presents on Hanukkah. We know that people play dreidel on Hanukkah, right? We know that stuff. And sometimes we remember that there's like a story about oil and a miracle of oil lasting a long time, and that's not the original Hanukkah story. So the original Hanukkah story is really more about a war, and it's a war between pretty religious Jews on one side and then Greeks and Jewish people who wanted to be more Greek on the other side. And the more religious Jews won and were able to take over, and they rededicated the temple. The word Hanukkah means dedication or rededication, so they rededicated the temple after they took it over from the Greeks and from the Jews who kind of wanted to be more Greek. So the original Hanukkah story is actually not necessarily a story that we might like as modern, not Orthodox Jews. Because the people who won in the Hanukkah story wouldn't necessarily have thought very nice things about us. But they are the last family to really have a Jewish government in the land of Israel until the state of Israel comes about. So they're important historically. They're also important because the things that they do have a lot to do with how Jewish history turns out. They're also important because they were a very small group of people. And being a very small group of people, winning a war against a very large group of people, and winning a war as Jews who really hadn't had their own country in a very long time, is a thing that we remember. It was important for early Israelis who felt like they were maybe like the Maccabees, that they were starting their own government and they were being heroic and all of these things. And the other thing that's really important about Hanukkah is when it happens in the year. When it happens in the year is December, sometimes late November. There was one year, 2013, Hanukkah and Thanksgiving started at the same time. That's very, very, very unusual. People had menorahs that looked like Thanksgiving turkeys with menorah. So that's unusual, but it happens. But what's important about that is it comes at the end of the year. It comes when it's dark outside earlier at night. If you live in Maryland or you live on the East Coast right now, Maryland, not necessarily on the East Coast, but Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Delaware, New York, Massachusetts, Connecticut, all the way up to Maine, it gets dark early, right? It gets dark before 5 o'clock. It gets dark at like 4:30. It starts getting really dark really quick. We have less daylight. And cultures all over the world, Christianity, Judaism, Islam, Hinduism, the Indian cultures all over the world have winter holidays that involve lighting candles or some other kind of light during the darkest point in the year, which is really the winter. We know from science why it gets dark, right? So the Earth has an axis, right? And it spins around on an axis, but it actually tilts during the year. And in the winter, if the sun is here, your part of the Earth is tilted away from the sun, right? So the sun is shining on the southern hemisphere, and here we are in the northern hemisphere. We don't have as much light, and it gets dark early. And people all over the world, when it gets dark in their part of the world, have a celebration where they light lights and try to make the night bright again. Well, Hanukkah is that holiday for Jews. It happens to come right around the same time as Christmas because Christmas is celebrating kind of the same thing, right? Christmas as a holiday starts in part by taking European customs for solstice, the winter solstice, the longest night of the year, where people lit candles or lit lights or burned trees or whatever. And that's where Hanukkah and Christmas and a lot of these other holidays have something in common, is we are all celebrating the fact that we are able to bring more light when it's dark, which is a really cool thing. So that's what we're all sort of celebrating when we celebrate Hanukkah or Christmas or Diwali. All of these holidays have this kind of common theme of bringing light into darkness. So that's a big part of what we do on Hanukkah. And that's why Hanukkah is still important, because we can bring light into darkness. We can bring light into darkness by lighting lights, but we can also bring our light, our personal light, right, into the darkness by making the world a little better. So that's a lot of what's going on with Hanukkah for us. So we've talked about Hanukkah in a big way. We sang Not by Might, right? Because we ideally want to make the world better peacefully, not by fighting wars. So we should probably sing another Hanukkah song. Now, the one we haven't done together yet this year is Hanukkah, O Hanukkah. If you were one of our JCS students, we actually did that this past Sunday with JCS, with Ehud during music, but maybe you didn't get there in time. Maybe you missed Ehud. Maybe you're not a JCS student. Maybe this is where you get your music stuff from. That's okay. Let's do Hanukkah, O Hanukkah together. It has an English verse. It also has a Yiddish verse. So we'll do the English verse first, and you'll learn the melody. And you probably won't be able to get the Yiddish verse, but I'll tell you what it means when we're done. And we'll sing the chorus, and we'll sing the English verse again and make sure that we've got it. Okay. Hanukkah, oh Hanukkah, come light the menorah. Let's have a party, we'll all dance the hora. the table, we'll give you a treat. Dreidels to play with and latkes to eat. And while we are playing, the candles are burning low. One for each night, they shed a sweet light to remind us of days long ago. One for each night, they shed a sweet light to remind us of days long ago. Okay, now we're going to do the Yiddish verse, so hang in there, because I have to put the words up, because I don't always remember the Yiddish words very well. So here we go. Hanukkah, oi Hanukkah, a yantef, a shener, a lustiger, a freilicher, nito, noch a zener, alle Nacht in Dreidel, spiele in mir, frische heiße latkes, essen mir, and while we are playing, the candles are burning low. One for each night, they shed a sweet light to remind us of days long ago. One for each night, they shed a sweet light to remind us of days long ago. Hanukkah, oi Hanukkah, come light the menorah. Let's have a party, we'll all dance the hora. Gather round the table, we'll give you a treat. Dreidels to play with and latkes to eat. And while we are playing, the candles are burning low. One for each night, they shed a sweet light to remind us of days long ago. One for each night, they shed a sweet light to remind us of days long ago. So, we haven't done the Yiddish verse together ever, I don't think. So maybe we'll do it again next week just to maybe review it and learn it, but you don't have to know how to sing the Yiddish verse. I just thought it would be nice for you to know that this started as a Yiddish song and eventually came into English a little bit later. So really started as a Yiddish song, so we did a Yiddish verse. So we've done a couple of songs. We talked about Hanukkah and bringing light into the world and what the history behind it is. But we should look at some menorahs. Because you may not know that there's lots of shapes for menorahs, and you may not know how wild those shapes can be. So I've got 3 different menorahs that I'm going to show you. So the first one, this is a pretty big one. This first one looks like a pretty traditional menorah, right? 9 right across the top, and just the branches going like that. Now this one has really big candle holders. You can put big fat Shabbat candles in this one. That's what it's designed for. So it's a pretty big one. You see it? Covers my whole face and then some. It's a pretty big menorah, right? So this is a more traditional looking menorah. And you'll notice that the middle candle, the shamash, is actually not all that raised up on this one. It's kind of flat. That's okay. Different menorahs look different. So that's a pretty traditional one. Now, there is a custom that some Jews believe that you can't have a menorah that doesn't have the candles in a straight line. So a lot of menorahs have all the candles in a straight line. This is another one, but it's not a very traditional looking menorah in some other respects. So it's a little bit old and a little bit fragile, so I have to be careful with it. So this is one my mom gave me. This is what we used for a while when I was growing up. So this is supposed to be the Maccabees. There were more than 9. There were not as many as 9 Maccabean brothers, but these are the Maccabees, right? We can kind of imagine. And there's 8 Maccabees in the back, and then the shamash, the helper candle, is up front here as number 9, right? But they're all kind of in the same line, you can see. So the Hebrew on it says Yisrael, Israel. So this is the one that we lit a lot when I was growing up. And I have it now, and I have to be very careful with it because it's older and it's a little bit fragile. So I'm going to put it down very carefully. And I've got one more out to show you. Sometimes you'll find menorahs that are perfectly round. I have one of those, but it's in a box, and I didn't want to tear up my bookcase to go get it, but I have this one instead. So let's see if I can find the front on this. Okay, here's the front. So check this thing out. This is supposed to look like a tree of life. There's a verse in the book of Proverbs, which is in the Bible, that calls wisdom, or calls Torah, a tree of life, Eitz Chaim, a tree of life to those who hold fast to it. And this is a menorah that's kind of shaped like a tree of life. So when you hold it flat, which I'm having a hard time doing today, here's the menorah held flat. So here are the 8 nights of Hanukkah, and then here's the shamash, the helper candle. So the basic idea is, in any menorah, you want to be able to make sure that you can tell which night you're on by just looking at the menorah and how many candles. So you don't want them too close together, because sometimes then you can't tell what's going on. But that's the basic idea, is just to be able to see what night you're on pretty easily. So this is a very fancy one that I think we found it at a garage sale or a thrift shop, actually. But you find things in weird places. So this is a pretty cool menorah that we have. And so once you have a menorah, what do you do with your menorah? I know you put candles in it. I get that, right? You know that you put candles in menorah. I don't need to tell you that part. But like, what order do you put them in? And where do you put your menorah? And all these kinds of things. So I have to tell you that the very basic way for lighting candles for Hanukkah, you don't even need a menorah. You don't even need more than one candle every night. The very, very basic way for lighting candles for Hanukkah is this. One candle, you can light one candle for everybody at home. Or everybody at home can light a candle for themselves. That's a very basic way of doing it. The rabbis 1,500 years ago said, well, you only need one candle, really, for every household. Everything else is making it nicer. But for us today, candles aren't so expensive. So a lot of the time, we can do multiple candles when we have a menorah. And so how do you do it when you have a menorah and you're going to have multiple candles? Okay, so this is my right side. This is my left side. The helper candle goes here. On the first night, you put a candle on the right. You light the helper, you light the candle on the right, and you're done. Second night, helper candle, candle here, you put a candle here. So you're going toward the left. You add the candles going to the left, and then you light them going back to the right. So candle here, candle here, candle here. Light this one, then that one. The newest one gets lit first. Night number 3, candle here on the right. Candle here, next to the right. Candle here, next to the right. Light this one, and then you light left to right. So that's the basic pattern. And then at the end, you put in your candles all the way across, and then you light them going the other direction. So remember, put the candles in right to left, and you light them left to right. And that's what you do. And one of the customs that came up with Hanukkah is something called Pirsomet Hanes, advertising the miracle. And so what a lot of people will do is they will put their menorah in the window, or make sure that you can see it through the window. And the idea is that people walking down the street maybe can see that it's Hanukkah, can maybe see and remember the holiday. If it's dangerous for you to do that, you shouldn't do it. But a lot of people do that, and a lot of people have electric menorahs. So I have an electric menorah that I can put in the window. That way I'm not putting fire in the window. Okay, so that's one of the things that you can do with the menorah, is put it in the window and other people can see that it's Hanukkah. So we've talked about our menorahs. We've talked about the story of Hanukkah. We did a couple of our Hanukkah songs. We have one Hanukkah song left to do. So we did Not by Might. That was all in English. and we did Hanukkah, O Hanukkah, and that was all in English, except that I sang one of the Yiddish verses so that you knew this is actually from Yiddish. Now we have one that's all in Hebrew, and we've been doing it for a couple of weeks, so it should be pretty familiar to us, I think. And this is Sivivon. So Sivivon means dreidel in Hebrew. So the words are Sivivon, Sov, Sov, Sov. Hanukkah hu Chag Tov. Dreidel, spin, spin, spin. Hanukkah is a good holiday. And then the second verse is Chag Simcha Hu La'am. It's a happy holiday for the people. Nes Gadol Hayasham. A great miracle happened there. The ancient rabbis said that the miracle was that 1 day's worth of oil lasted 8 days. The big surprise is really that a really small army of people who really weren't soldiers were able to defeat a Greek army and create a country for Jews for a little while. So that's really the bigger miracle. And then there's the miracle, if you want to call it a miracle, the amazing thing about nature that the days get shorter and longer, and the amazing thing about us as humans that we figured out how to deal with the fact that the world gets dark by making light, by lighting a fire. That's pretty cool. So we'll do Sivivon, and then that will be it until, well, we have words on Wednesday, but that'll be it until we're in the middle of Hanukkah for our Monday music and more. So let's go ahead and we will do our Sivivon song. Sivivon, Sov, 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 Hanukkah, hu Chag Tov, Hanukkah, hu Chag Tov, Sivivon, Sov, 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 Sivivon, Sov, 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 Hanukkah, hu Chag Tov, Hanukkah, hu Chag Tov, Sivivon, Sov, 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 Chag Simcha, hu La'am, Nes Gadol Hayasham, Nes Gadol Hayasham, Chag Simcha hu La'am, Chag Simcha hu La'am, Nes Gadol Hayasham, Nes Gadol Hayasham, Chag Simcha hu La'am. Let's do it again, just because it's Hebrew, we should give it a shot and see if we can figure it out. Ready? Here we go. Sivivon, Sov, 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 Hanukkah, hu Chag Tov, Hanukkah, hu Chag Tov, Sivivon, Sov, 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 Chag Simcha hu La'am, Nes Gadol Hayasham, Nes Gadol Hayasham, Chag Simcha hu La'am, Sivivon, Sov, 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 Hanukkah, hu Chag Tov, Hanukkah, hu Chag Tov, Sivivon, Sov, 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 Sivivon, Sov, 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 Hanukkah, hu Chag Tov, Hanukkah, hu Chag Tov, Sivivon, Sov, 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 Chag Simcha hu La'am, Nes Gadol Hayasham, Nes Gadol Hayasham, Chag Simcha hu La'am, Chag Simcha hu La'am, Nes Gadol Hayasham, Nes Gadol Hayasham, Chag Simcha hu La'am. All right, so we did Not by Might, we did Sivivon, we did Hanukkah, O Hanukkah. We talked about why we talk about the miracle of light, and we talked about how you light your Hanukkah menorah, how you put the candles in, and then what direction you light them in, because it's tough to remember sometimes. So, grab your adult. Hey, adult, come back. Okay, adult, I'm going to review with you too. Menorah. This is my right, this is my left. The candles go in which direction? Good, from right to left, and you light them from left to right. So, day 1, Shamash, helper candle in the middle. Day number 1 candle, light it. Day number 2, Shamash in the middle. Day number 1 candle, day number 2 candle, light day number 2, then light day number 1. Day number 3, Shamash. Day number 1, day number 2, day number 3. Put them in that order and then light them the other way. So you're always lighting the newer one. Got it? There will be a quiz. It starts on the night of the 10th. And it goes, all the way through the 18th, when you have to figure out how to light your menorah without having me in the video telling you which direction to put the things in. So I hope that you, adult, and you, all the other people out there, have a happy Hanukkah, and I will see you soon. Happy Hanukkah.